AI is moving fast, but real value doesn't come from hype. It comes from people, practice, and learning together. Welcome to the Copilot and Teams Users Group, where AI and the AI-powered workplace get real. Your hosts for the Copilot and Teams Users Group are leaders working at the intersection of AI, collaboration, and real-world execution. Preston Piney, Director of AI Workforce at Microsoft, Aaron Miller, Principal Solutions Engineer at Microsoft, and Ryan Herbst, Chief Strategist at Unified Communications. This is a monthly online show and users group session designed for learning, sharing, and accelerating real AI value. The first 45 minutes are live and open to everyone, broadcast on LinkedIn, YouTube, and into the exclusive members-only users group meeting. This public segment features panel discussions, expert interviews, real-world demonstrations, plus news and analysis centered on Copilot, Teams, and the AI-powered workplace. Then we transition to something different. The second 45 minutes are a non-recorded, members-only users group session restricted to qualifying mid-market and enterprise end users. This is a trusted space, a shared journey, where members learn, explore, and openly share what's really working with the goal of accelerating AI value inside their organizations and personally. If you'd like to apply to join the members-only users group, you'll find a link in the show notes below. This show is made possible by our standing sponsors, Microsoft, bringing Copilot and the AI-powered workplace vision to life, AI Producer, a Teams native production studio that upscales Teams meetings, town halls, and events, and is being used to produce this show. Unified Communications, a global integrator and Microsoft partner that consults, deploys, and supports organizations in bringing their vision for a modern AI-powered workplace to life. With deep expertise across Copilot and Teams adoption, Teams Rooms and AV, Teams Phone, and Microsoft Places. Each episode also features a rotating show sponsor highlighting innovation across the ecosystem. Whether you're just starting with Copilot or scaling it across the enterprise, you're in the right place. This is about real experiences, real lessons, and real outcomes. Let's get started. Welcome to the August live show. I'm Ryan Herbst, Chief Strategist with Unified Communications, and super excited that you have joined us. And we have a really fun show in store today with a special Microsoft guest sharing how they're unleashing the power of Cowork. And we're going to follow it with what I think is a really timely discussion around how you can find the right footing on AI spend and ensure organizations are getting real value in return. So yeah, let me bring in my co-hosts, Preston and Aaron.
Hey, thanks. I'm Preston Piney. I am fascinated by a simple question. What happens when your coworkers aren't just people anymore? So if you're curious about AI or agents or digital labor, you're probably in the right place. Aaron?
I'm Aaron, and I guess I'm in the right place because I want to know the answer to that question too. But also, I'm just involved in this stuff all day, every day, and feel like there's so much to this technology that's beyond just how the technical part works that I love having these conversations with Preston and Ryan. So,
before we jump in, if you work for a company that has 750 or more employees and you're an end user, you're not a reseller or a consultant or a vendor, we'd love to invite you to join the members only users group that takes place immediately following these live shows. You can scan the QR code on the screen or use the link in the show notes to request access, and you'll get notified of future monthly sessions. And again, these take place immediately following the live broadcast, and we'll talk a little more later about some of the goodness that takes place inside the users group session.
Awesome. Hey, so I'm going to introduce our first segment today, and I want to bring in someone that I'm really excited about, Bree Hushoff from, she's an account executive at Microsoft. And I just want to take a moment and really emphasize that title for a reason. So Bree's not an engineer. She's not a developer. She's someone whose day job is like working with customers, building relationships, and driving business outcomes, right? So what you're going to see, though, is that she's doing some of the absolute most creative and technologically impressive work that I've seen Copilot or Cowork pull off yet. And so you're going to get to see a tiny glimpse of what I've seen that Bree can do today. But she does things like building these branded presentations and polished documents and just content that looks like it came from an entire design team because, well, she built her own design team, which is a whole nother story, which is awesome. But it's really, I guess my question becomes, what used to be considered sort of technical isn't technical anymore. So what does that look like, right? So if you know how to describe what you want and you can build it, I think that's what it means to be technical. Bree, thanks for joining us. Why don't you walk us through what you've been building and kind of how you're using these tools to bring kind of brand and style directly into your work? Because I am eminently impressed.
First of all, thank you so much. Just like Preston said, you do not have to be a technical genius to create beautiful content. I think a lot of us right now are used to very interesting AI dashboards that will just set to the default. If you guys know about the red dashboards and the cream color typically, we want to make sure that we create good content, but we also want to create non-AI looking content. And how do we do that? And what are the tools that we use to make us successful in doing that? So what I'm going to share right now is what I call my Aurora Brand Kit overview. And I'm going to talk through my process and how I went from an account executive with very little knowledge about machine learning or AI, and how I turned that into a superpower and a system to really change the flow of work and what that looks like as I demonstrate with my coworkers, my customers, with showing Preston the digital worlds that I have built. And I'm not going to go into the worlds today. That might be level 100 content, or sorry, 400 content. But I am going to show you my signature system and how I've thought about that, particularly when using Cowork. So one moment, y'all. I'm going to share my screen.
This is just how you build suspense.
Hey, I'm a big suspense person, but don't ask me to watch a horror movie. I will be a total chicken when I watch that in total suspense. Okay, so I created what we call a skill, but a skill is driven from prompts, right? So when we think about the types of questions that we're asking AI, you have to ask it and show curiosity. So I did not just build this out of the drop of a hat. What I did was I asked AI intentionally, what are the themes? What is the color psychology of how we present to customers? What are the types of colors that we're seeing across businesses that tend to show better readability? What do we want to achieve to show something that is more personal to me and my own brand kit that I can show internally that won't just make people cry from seeing bleeds of yellow or an ugly red dashboard on a daily basis? So here's what I've done. I use Cowork specifically for brand kits, and I'll tell you why. Cowork has the ability to use multiple agents in a workflow to help you build the exact beautiful brand kit that you are looking to achieve. Now, for me, what I've done, and I've already kind of loaded this because it does take some time. I'll be honest, it takes it about 5-10 minutes to really get it right if you're going back and forth between Cowork itself. But I am going to show you the thought process and the tasks that it's going through. So you can see over here, the user wants to see their Aurora brand kit. So it will present it visually with swatches, and then it's going to check the playbook for how a brand kit should be formatted. A top tip I have for you guys as well, just find your favorite PowerPoint. You can find one that's online. You can find one that maybe your company has created. You can find one that maybe you've done in the past and really like it. And you can actually paste that presentation into Cowork and say, Cowork, I want you to analyze this brand kit, the types of fonts, the colors, the message that it's displaying. And I want you to think of a similar style or a similar PowerPoint that I can create to make it my own. I would like to add insert content. I would like it to be visually impressive. I would like it to be readable. You can start there for just your beginning PowerPoint brand kit format. and ask it questions. The biggest difference between a beautiful brand kit design and creating an ugly AI dashboard is asking questions, using your curiosity, and providing sample images that maybe you found online, or maybe you found it from your regular PowerPoint that you really like, and having Cowork go through that and help you iterate and create a brand kit. So you can see over here, it's gone through its thought process. It talks about my playbook variant. It's talking about precedence over the legacy Aurora MD spec. And it's going through and building this as an artifact for you to build. So at a glance, you can see what it's done. It's taking the palette that it created for me, which I encoded in the skill. And remember, all of this starts with a prompt. You don't just have to stick with my skill. You start with a prompt, you finalize your brand kit, and then you tell Cowork, can you save this as a skill? You don't have to do anything fancy. You can just tell Cowork you want to save this as a skill for next time. So you could see my Aurora at a glance. You can see my notes, my signature moves, my Playfair display for titles, hero numbers, italics. It's talking about my signature move for my Playfair on a midnight card. And you can see how Cowork did this. But you'll see here, it created one that said internal use. Well, this is part of the process of going back with AI. I told Cowork, I don't need this to be internal use. I want this to say for demo purposes, because I'm showing you guys how I have created this for demos. So Cowork goes, I'm going to go ahead and update the header label for demo purposes. And I want to show you this process because I'm sure you are going to watch a ton of videos and they're going to have a perfect prompt and a perfect conversation. And it's going to look like, wow, these people are geniuses. They never make a mistake. That's not true. It happens all the time. And I would rather show you my messy AI process than show you something that's perfect and made for TV. Because the reality is, it's not made for TV. Life isn't made for TV, and neither is AI. So you can see, create a sample PowerPoint. I said I noticed the HTML didn't get updated. It shows internal. Now it shows me my brand kit, my sample deck. I'm going to open that up real quick. So you see how it's showing what the preview is in the chat? I find this to be really, really unique because when you go and you look at how it's created these decks, you can go ahead and say, you know, this makes a lot of sense for me. I really, really like this. It's great. It looks awesome. Or you might say, I don't really like this design. I need you to go back and redo this for me. And while this is for my sample PowerPoint for this presentation, I want you to think about the types of workflows that you're doing, the things that you're repeating on a daily basis, and the things that are going to be most important to you and your executives and your customers most importantly. The way that you do this is through Work IQ if you're using Cowork. So I ask it to evaluate my workflows of the last 90 days, look at emails, my Teams chats, look at my content that I'm frequently interacting with, and give me suggestions for how I should be thinking about my workflows and how I'm designing these brand kits and really bringing them to life. When you go down, you can see all these different ads as well. You can go to my Aurora brand kit. And you can see right here, it says Leadership Narrative Deck System. This is for demo purposes. And I put in here, it should feel like it was made by someone who didn't have to prove anything. Because less is more, but also being specific and making AI be specific is a whole other piece that I would add. And you can see my palette, my gradient links, and my accents. You can see how I'm scaling impact with skills. And then you can see my rectangles only, accent rules, and then having it go through. Now this is for demo purposes, but I'm going to give you a sneak peek of something that I've done before. I created a fictional Copilot Cowork resource hub for a firm called Frontier Firm. This is all public documentation, safe for Microsoft's purposes with customers. So this is all public information, nothing that's internal. And you can see how I'm creating this content around our brand and theme and our colors to help customers understand what Cowork is, what it does, and how they can potentially use it. I even put Cowork, Copilot Chat, or do I use an agent? I think everybody's been there when we're trying to figure out what AI do I use. And as you can see, I've gone through here, and this is just another example of what you can do within Copilot Cowork. Now, I've spoken a lot and I've spoken quite fast, so I'll take a pause there.
Yeah, this is fantastic, Bree. Actually, what I wanted to talk about was when I look at this PowerPoint or the PowerPoint deck you were showing before and this HTML file. Am I seeing the same brand kit used on both of those?
I actually use two different ones. So when we talk about my HTML for Aurora, this is the same kit as the PowerPoint I was showing earlier. And I use the same brand kit for the HTML and for the PowerPoint. And then for Copilot Cowork, I have another brand kit just called Copilot Cowork Resource Hub that creates that HTML. But for both Aurora, yes, they're both the same brand kit. I just wanted to show off my cool little toy I just created this morning.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. Honestly, I think that's what's kind of cool about it is that it's not as if you had to develop one way that everything's always going to look this way when it comes from Bree, but instead, when you create certain types of assets or you communicate in a certain way, you want them to be consistent and look that way. But when when customer facing stuff maybe or internal stuff, maybe you have a different brand kit, just a different style that you're using, but you still have consistency, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that I think is really cool is it says, if you notice my skill, it's going to say brand kits Brie. And it actually has all of my other PowerPoints into one big skill. So if you want to create multiple brand kits, you can put your skills into one big skill and combine them, just call it brand kits. And then it'll ask you specifically what brand kit you want to use. And you can also ask it based off of the content and work IQ that you have, which brand kit you should choose if you want AI to help.
So what I think is really important. Yeah, go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, just curious how were you doing this before Cowork?
I couldn't do anything like that fancy, to be honest. I started iterating with Copilot in PowerPoint when it first came out, but it was pretty rough in Frontier. I'll just be honest about that. And so I had to go through pre-made decks, pre-made PowerPoints, and struggle with trying to figure out, what brand kit do I use and where can I find the right materials? And it was a struggle. I mean, it would take me hours to figure out which one I needed to do, and then I had to do all of that by hand. So it was rough.
Yeah, or you end up very dependent on others, right? I think this is empowering in a very different way because you're able to bring your personality and your tastes and your preferences through in a way that you may have had to depend just entirely on kind of marketing templates, and it's super exciting.
And if you want to get really crazy, like hold the horn here, you can create an automation that will automatically create your brand kits for a particular customer meeting or internal meeting on demand. And you can do that within Cowork with the automation pieces in it. So let's say you've got a bunch of customer meetings next day. You can say, look at all my meetings, look at my work IQ, and build this brand kit for me and make sure it's ready the next day. Pretty cool. And I've done that before to save time. You can think about how many hours that saved. But yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I think that's a great point, Ryan and Bree, which is that it's sometimes what AI empowers you with isn't just to do something a little bit better or a little bit faster. It empowers you to do something that before you simply wouldn't have done, couldn't have done, wasn't realistic for you to do, right? And so I think that's been an interesting lesson. In particular, I think what's fun here, Bree, is that, again, the way you built all of this was just by having conversations with your AI, right? Telling it, here's what I want, think this through.
Yeah.
So I assume that this wasn't you setting around writing code or trying to do anything, what we would traditionally think of as being technical. Is that right?
Might have lost Bree.
I think we may have had a small glitch there with with Bree, but hopefully she'll be back in a minute. So with that, maybe this is a good time, Ryan, for us to make a little bit of a transition here. I think that was fantastic personally. I think, for me, it was probably big takeaway is that I think this brand content stuff is approachable for anyone. I think what she's doing is anyone can do it. You just have to have the creativity to think of it or to know it's possible, and then you can go and do it. So with that, let's see. Let's transition a little bit because I think there's a challenge here, Ryan, which is not everybody currently has access to Cowork, right? That's the thing we were just showing. So how do we end up there? What do we want to talk about? How do we kind of address that elephant in the room here?
Yeah, no, I completely agree with what you were kind of getting at there, Preston. And looks like maybe we have Bree back with us. So thank you so much for going through that, Bree. Hopefully you can stick with us and continue in the conversation. Because we're going to transition just a little now and talk a bit about like where Preston was going with this, about how these tools are really about enabling people's creativity, right? So your limits are really your creativity now that you have tools that can help produce things that maybe previously, as you all were just discussing, you wouldn't have even attempted because you weren't excellent at PowerPoint or whatnot. So now you have a whole world of possibilities in front of you that these things can enable. But do you have access to these tools? And we've seen a whole lot of that changing. So what I'd love to kind of see us talk about today is that we're starting to see, like in the example that Bree just showed, was really tangible examples of how AI is delivering real value and improving the output, as well as like how long it takes to actually create that and get that. What, like for me, making those PowerPoints or tweaking them and things like that would be a lot of tedious work. And so taking that work off my plate. So since Cowork's assistance comes at a cost, we're going to start talking about how that's going in the world. So I have a lot of customers that are starting to really focus on that conversation. And really it boils down to how should organizations decide how much to spend, who should have access, and how to ensure they're getting value or return on what they're spending on tools like Cowork. So because most people are paying attention to this, if you've been paying attention over the last year or so, you've seen that like go from everyone doing everything, right? So it's like the what we were calling originally like token maxing type of world, right? Where they're like, just use it as much as possible for every little thing. And then the bills started to roll in and they said, whoa, maybe not every little thing, don't necessarily do that. And we're starting to see it go pretty much the opposite direction in a lot of places where there's definitely this austerity coming into play around the use and the allocation of tokens. So that reaction, we're seeing like that pendulum, so to speak, swing. So there has to be a middle ground, right? So typically in these technology advancements, we tend to see things go from one extreme to the other, and eventually it kind of settles on that middle ground. But I don't know that there's a solid framework for that yet. So my question, maybe I'll start off with you, Preston, is, and because we've had some of these discussions before, but how are you thinking about all of this, right? And how are you having these conversations with your customers?
I think the hardest part, Aaron, is not just giving a blanket answer and instead trying to reflect a little bit on what I do during the day and how I actually work. In fact, like what's happening on my computer right now while we're in the middle of this live broadcast, I have multiple things happening. I've got a coding agent that's been running for 28 hours nonstop over here working on something. I've got a series of automations that kick off. I talk about them as multiple agents, but there are a whole bunch of automations that help me show up better, do my job better. They improve my overall productivity and enable me to do things I couldn't do before. But then I have another tool that I paused on that's where I work and interact with. Those other things just sort of happen, but what I'm interacting with to actually help me do things that I couldn't do before realistically, and that's kind of what Bree was talking about in Cowork. And so I really am doing all of that. I think what changed, Aaron, is I really was in that sort of token maxing anxiety crowd of, I'm not doing enough yet. I got to get it to do more. I clearly can't run 24/7 all the time. Although now I finally figured the technology caught up. I didn't figure anything out. All of a sudden, GitHub Copilot just took off and it can do cool stuff now. But for me, it's about the fact I stop and think about it. Like, what is it that I'm about to do? What is the best tool to do that in? What's that likely to cost me? And is it worth doing? Is this going to drive the impact that my manager would recommend me to be doing, or that my leadership has somehow said I should be doing? It's really a mind shift and a culture around, just because I can doesn't mean I should. I don't know. Ryan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. I think there's some major cultural shifts as well that have to begin to take place inside organizations, just around the idea of one, consumption-based tools for knowledge workers, because I think we're accustomed to that in other realms. But how do you measure and find value? And I think to some degree, we know that it's not just about time savings, although there's significant time savings that come from these tools. It's much more around what can we do with that time, and as a manager, do we need to begin to raise the bar a little, as Bree has way more capabilities than she had previously, right? Can I expect a little more? Can the KPIs begin to kind of ratchet up a little bit? I think we need to have those types of conversations, because there are costs attached to this, and it's not just about my convenience, because I certainly could I could choose to use my time that I recaptured for purposes that don't necessarily benefit the company, or it could be directly focused on something that we have constraints on or limited ability to execute, and that we know we can do more engagements, we can deliver more of X or Y, or we can cancel a subscription for something that was that was expensive, or I no longer have to rely on these other resources, and now can. But I think there's a new world, and I don't know that we figured out the exact answers, but I think we have to be thinking very differently about how we begin to measure value. I also think there's a little bit of implicit trust. I think like in the beginning of just the idea, when we were talking about just using some of these AI tools, there was this kind of ROI quest at that moment to show me the ROI, and I think there's a little bit of faith you have to have in the idea that we do need familiarity and we need experience. We need to be understanding what these tools are capable of. Doesn't mean that we have to give the entire organization carte blanche access.
Bree, I'm sure you've got to have thoughts on this, right?
I mean, my biggest thought was reining in token maxing, which is a term in frontier land right now, people going full token usage crazy. And I will admit, I am a little bit of a token maxer. So I've had to go back and think through tokenization. I've had to go back and think through, how do I make efficient prompts? I've had to go back and start at zero. The thing I'll recommend is there's a lot of really great research right now on how to rein in on how many tokens you're using, best models, how to make yourselves more token efficient. I'm not saying you got to go look at Harvard's AI adoption pages and reading hundreds of documents. Just ask your favorite AI tool how and what the latest research says about token efficiency and how you can incorporate that into your business workflows. Because token efficiency is what's going to help you save money ultimately and get you to where you want to go.
Actually, I think there's a bigger elephant in the room. I'm going to address it. I have been doing that, and I think you're right, Bree, that each individual can go and get more technical understanding of what's actually happening and how they can be better at it. In fact, tools like GitHub Copilot app, you can actually just have it tell you, it'll tell you, hey, here's what you could do to increase that. It has that knowledge, and so you just talk to it, and that's great. It has skills for that. But you know what the biggest thing is? I look around at what people are doing with these tools. You know what the number one use case for it is? People building their own custom dashboards. So everybody I know has a dashboard that takes a ton of different automations, brings them together, and every morning does all this. And those automations are all generative AI. And some of the best advice I heard actually came yesterday. And it was just like this reminder of, dang it, you start running in a direction and you just keep running down that path until somebody says, hey, dummy, there's a highway over here that you could just already get there. And it was this simple thing. If you'll just tell your agents, I prefer to use code anywhere that there's a deterministic set of work being done, changes everything. Like it's that easy so that not everything's done by the language model and burning tokens. So use the language model to figure out the system, the pattern, right? And then the language model writes some Python code or whatever in the background. And those automations trigger that Python. So it all still works exactly the way it used to, but now it's running a bunch of code that's deterministic, that doesn't cost tokens, that is like almost free in comparison. And then you get this idea of, hey, you know what? If there are 84 of us all building these dashboards, maybe we need one coded dashboard, one deterministic dashboard, and we could all just sort of share it. We could even have a single repo where we work together to build it out. Like, what a neat concept. It seems like sometimes old is new again when we learn where we're at. Just my musings.
Aaron, what's your take?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing you're talking about where like, and that's huge in my world as well as you can imagine, where everyone's kind of running their own dashboards and the various tools and playing with even the new kind of pre-release stuff that's local automations and whatnot. They're all sharing this around and talking about how they've used these technologies to do it. But at the same time, I always wonder, like, so if everybody needed these types of dashboards, why is it that everyone needs to build this on their own, right? to your point. Right. Or if we can all get to a point where there's that code aspect that you're talking about to execute it, it's great. It reminds me of a scenario. I have a larger enterprise, and there's a executive that was talking about their testing of Cowork, where they were like, yeah, it was fantastic. I have a report that I have to put together for monthly briefings. And it usually takes me about 2 days to gather all the details and put the slides together and fact check and do all this stuff. So it took about 30, 40 minutes to do it, to gather all the information, put it into a nice presentation, modeled after one that he had previously done. So kind of like the brand kit thing, I need him to watch so he can steal that part. But basically he just said, make it like the previous one I've done, which was kind of a brand kit. And then, he had it fact checked too. He put it through another prompt from a different point of view saying, hey, this is the source material. This is the presentation. Make sure everything adds up. That do all the details, make sure that they're right, because he didn't want to walk in with something is wrong. And then he did his own kind of cursory check. All that about 40, 45 minutes by the end of it. He said, and then the cost of it was about $18. To which you go, whoa, he's like, that was way more expensive than he expected. And I asked, well, why did that seem expensive to you? Because you just said it saved you 2 days of work and a lot of tedious effort. And he's like, well, yeah, but I wouldn't have spent that $18. I just would have spent 2 days. I'm like, you're like a high paid executive in the company. Are you not worth $18 over 2 days? And he's like, that's not the point. Point is, that cost already would have been paid. Like I get paid those 2 days regardless, and I'm expected to do the work. An extra $18 to do the work quicker is in one way great, but in the other way, how do I justify that when it's not just me, it's all of the people at my level across the enterprise, or even the couple levels above or below, right? Because we end up talking about thousands of people, and if they're all doing $18 a month minimum to do this kind of stuff, that really becomes a cost, and they already are doing the work. They're just doing it slower. So all that to say, they're starting to try to figure out, like we talked about, there's a way to find the middle ground. There's a new way that people are trying to rationalize how to think about this. And I don't know that there's a solid, perfect answer on it yet. And I think, like with everything, there'll be variations for each company. But I think it's always seems to me it's becoming, at least now, a lot less about can AI do this, right? Which is what we were doing the last 2 years. Now it's about, is it worth it for AI to do it for the output I'm getting, the consistency of the output I'm getting, versus the person who's requesting its time and the opportunity loss of what they could do with the time they saved somewhere else. Everyone always goes back to, great, you saved them 2 days. Well, what did they do with that time? That's a great question, but is that the key to whether or not you should save a person time to do work? Well, ideally, you're still paying them to do work. They're going to continue to use that free spared up time to do work. So is that a value or not is really what companies are trying to are wrestling with, is what I'm finding.
I'm curious though, Aaron and Ryan, because you both brought this up around, the cost of actually doing this. Like, what about the reality that these are unbudgeted, unanticipated expenses? So even if they're driving real value, I'm curious, Ryan, like, your company or as you talk to your customers, how are you thinking about budgeting for digital labor? Like, how do you decide who in the company gets access to
Yeah.
which tools?
I mean, we're thinking about it a little bit like the way we thought about just the initial use of kind of LLM tools and that idea on one hand, and on the other, I think it makes me think a little bit about just the simple factory analogy. If I can turn up the speed and produce more with a better machine, we've got to be able to figure out like there's downstream positive impact of that. But I just think that organizations have to, it may not be how that position or that executive was measured. It may not be how we've been thinking about just the way we manage our culture and our organization. But because these capabilities are new and exciting. And so I think it's one of those moments where I think we have some of the investment has to be around faith and the idea that for competitive reasons, because we've seen how fast things are evolving, we know that we need to we need to not have our head in the sand as it relates to kind of these modern frontier capabilities. We got to figure it out. So some of that I think you have to budget for, but I think at the same time, you're frantically pushing on the other side to say, if we can't figure out what to do with extra time from valuable resources, we need to put effort into that, and we need to figure out how to measure it.
I think that's a real challenge. Bree, I don't know, when you talk to your customers, is this coming up for you? Are they asking you about digital labor and what they should be thinking? Before you answer, there you go. Yeah.
So I'm in an interesting market. I'm in mid-market. So you can think about customers that are not as big as an enterprise customer, but they're not a customer that's in what we call like SMB. So I'm working with organizations that are typically between 300 at the low end, all the way up to, I would say 8,000 employees, right? So it's that middle ground, right? And 7,000 is quite high for me. I would say the average would be probably around 1,500 to 2,000 employees. And what they're trying to figure out, especially around workflows, is one, how do I make sure that I have the proper permissions and guardrails so that something doesn't leak to the employees that I don't want to have access to whatever piece of information it is? So that's one, permissions and guardrails. The second is, how am I going to scale to my organization when I have an IT team of 5 people and they're already overworked and stressed? I think a lot of the things that is happening as well is that a lot of leaders are putting training and adoption on IT, when really training and adoption should probably come under HR or learning and initiatives director. And it's finding that balance between. And so one of the things that people are also doing is trying to determine what employees get access to what based on their roles. And Cowork is brand new, so I have a bunch of clients that are testing it out within IT and their executives first before they broadly roll it out. But those are the two main things that we're currently hearing in the field, what I'm hearing, especially for mid-sized customers. It's a totally different ballgame than what you would see typically with maybe like an enterprise organization that has like 20,000 plus employees.
Hour to go into all this, but this conversation of what to use when and who gets access to what, that
we have a whole
is
nother 45 minutes to keep talking about this.
Oh,
this is true. Yeah, this is exactly the type of discussion that continues into the members only session. Deeper, not recorded. Just again, a different dynamic. And so, yeah, I think just a great reminder that if you're an end user at an organization that has 750 or more employees, we'd love to invite you again to join the members only users group. And again, those sessions take place immediately after these live sessions. And it's interactive, it is intentionally not recorded, and it's an opportunity to really learn, explore, and share, and have real conversations, not just kind of one-way conversations with your peers. So yeah, you can scan the QR code or click the link in the show notes to request access, and we'll approve qualified members quickly. We'll get you calendar invites. Our users group members are actually on a watch meeting, watching all of this, and then we join them in just a couple of minutes. For everybody else, please follow the Copilot and Teams users group on LinkedIn. You'll be notified about future shows and announcements. And if today's show resonated with you, we would love you to share it with your network. Leave us a comment. If there's a topic that you'd love to see us talk about in future broadcasts, we'd welcome that. And mark your calendars, because our next live show is September 30th, and we're going to be diving into agentic automation, when you should automate, when you shouldn't. How do you think about Cowork and Scout and Copilot? And I guess we all know that the lines are starting to blur a little bit with these tools. And how do you think about them? And if today's token discussion got you thinking about where to spend your AI budget, next month we're going to kind of talk about where to aim that. And so details will be on our LinkedIn page. And so yeah, Bree, Aaron, Preston, any closing thoughts?
I'm just gonna
sorry, go ahead,
push one time for people to come join this community. I don't think you understand the magnitude of this. Like what Bree just showed you is amazing, but your opportunity to come back in and ask her questions and better understand and be able to communicate with her is huge. But to get onto this community, participate in and understand how your peers are thinking about the topics we just talked about, I think that's what's valuable. That's what I'm looking forward to in a few minutes when we switch over there. I want to hear their feedback. I want to hear their real world stories of how they're dealing with all of this. And I think that's what people need more of, is real world connection right now with the pace of change. So this community is literally for those of you who are watching this, either live or recorded, to start joining us and really get that human connection of how do others deal with these challenges. Go ahead, Aaron.
No, that's exactly what I was going to say. So, but no, same sentiment for sure. This conversation is evergreen, right? This is not something that we just closed the book on it and now you have an answer. There's more to discuss. There's many facets. There's a lot of nuance to it, as well as we have these great presenters each month that show us cool new tricks and tips and ways of working. And there's a lot that you can learn by asking them follow-up questions that you don't get to do in the live stream. So absolutely, coming to that next session is great. As for this topic, I think the main thing that we wanted to make sure we got the point across is that either extreme today of token maxing, complete token austerity, don't do any of it because it's scary and you can't control the spend potentially. Neither of those are the right answer. There's definitely a middle road, and that's what everyone's trying to figure out. So communities like this are where you can help yourself learn what that middle road looks like.
It's how you fight through the paralysis of the pace of change, I think.
Yeah,
totally. And I know Bree is going to join us in the members only users group. So thank you, Bree, for joining us for the live session. And thanks for sticking around for the users group session. And with that, we're going to wrap the live show and we'll transition directly to our members only interactive session. And so for our live users, thank you. And for our users group members, we will see you in just a moment. And with that, we'll call this one a wrap.
Sounds great. Thanks.